So what's Diddy like?
I don't know. He's been kind.
As Diddy's trial kicks off, his team wants you to believe he's been calm and collected behind bars. But the word on the street tells a whole different story.
They also saying that Diddy, he got inmates in jail making his bed.
And believe it or not, that's not even the wildest part. Diddy's own cellmate just broke his silence, and the claims he's making are disturbing. In this video, we're breaking down exactly what was said and what Diddy's team might be trying to cover up. The shocking truth about Diddy's prison life. Now, before we get into all the juicy details, let's set the scene and understand exactly where Diddy is being held. The Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, or MDC as it's known in the streets, ain't your average correctional facility. This place has been described as hell on earth by some who've been through it. We're talking about a facility with a reputation for dreadful conditions, severe staff shortages, and a history of inmate violence. It's the kind of place where even a billionaire like Diddy has to adjust to a whole new way of living. Diddy ain't in a regular cell though. He's housed in a special unit known as 4 North, which is a dormitory-style living space designed for high-profile inmates. This unit accommodates about 20 men, and it's where Diddy has reportedly been living alongside some interesting characters, including Sam Bankman-Fried, the convicted cryptocurrency fraudster who's serving a 25-year sentence. This arrangement has created a unique dynamic that has led to some wild stories coming out of MDC. So what's really going on behind bars with Diddy? In a revealing interview with Tucker Carlson, Bankman-Fried spilled details about Diddy's life in jail.
And he's been kind to people in the unit. He's been kind to me. It's a position no one wants to be in. Obviously he doesn't. I don't. As you said, it's kind of a soul-crushing place for the world in general.
Bankman-Fried described the facility as a soul-crushing place, emphasizing the supportive nature of their interactions in this harsh environment. But he didn't go into details about Diddy's specific routines or behaviors at night. However, there are some wild rumors floating around about how Diddy's been living in prison. One of the most talked about claims comes from journalist Toure, who alleged that there are groupies among the inmates in Diddy's unit who want to do special things for Diddy, including making his bed. According to Toure, there's even jealousy among these inmates over who gets to perform these tasks for the music mogul. DJ Academics discussed this on his show, saying,
according to you, the inmates are fighting over making his bed.
Yep.
Academics went on to explain.
Yep. Well, really, according to Lisa Evers, I want to give her credit. Lisa Evers does an amazing job covering all things, within the New York metropolitan area. She interviewed an inmate that spent some time at MDC Brooklyn alongside Diddy. And, remember, we're all thinking that Diddy's like in super isolation, doesn't talk to no inmates.
This claim suggests that rather than being isolated from other inmates, Diddy has been interacting with them and supposedly has enough influence that other prisoners are competing for his attention and approval. But is this for real, or is it just another wild rumor about a celebrity behind bars? Freddie P, when hearing about these claims, expressed disbelief.
Nigga, protect your life. I ain't making your bed, homie. Make your own bed.
His reaction highlights how unusual this claim would be in the context of prison culture, where such behavior might typically be seen as compromising one's status or respect among other inmates. So what's really happening with Diddy at night in jail? While specific details about his nightly routine remain scarce, we do have some information about his daily life and the overall conditions he's experiencing. Diddy's day reportedly begins with breakfast at 7 a.m., followed by a structured schedule that includes laptop use from 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. for reviewing legal evidence, with compulsory bed checks throughout the day. His cell is described as an 8 by 10 foot space with a steel bed and a 1.5-inch mattress, lacking a pillow, which his attorney, Mark Agnifilo, has called disgusting. This is a far cry from the lavish mansions and luxury lifestyle Diddy was accustomed to before his incarceration. The communal space in his housing unit offers some recreational facilities such as yoga mats, a small basketball hoop, ping pong, television, a microwave, exercise balls, bathroom stalls, and communal tables, providing some relief from the confinement. But the nights, which are the focus of our investigation, remain somewhat of a mystery based on publicly available information. One interesting aspect of Diddy's jail life that has been reported is his financial situation inside. Inmates can spend up to $180 every 2 weeks at the commissary, purchasing items like Snickers, $5.95 for 6, Cheez-Its, $3.65, mackerel, $1 each used as currency among inmates, radios, and watches. This constraint is particularly noteworthy noteworthy given Diddy's billionaire status on the outside. Reports indicate that Diddy has been using $1 cans of mackerel, known as Max, as a form of currency within the prison system. This practice, while common in some correctional facilities, has been described as humiliating for someone of his former stature. It's a stark illustration of how even the wealthy and powerful must adapt to the realities of prison life. But the tea gets even hotter when we start looking at allegations about Diddy's behavior and influence within the prison. According to court filings by the government, Diddy has been accused of using other inmates' phone privileges to make unauthorized communications. DJ Academics discussed this, saying,
That's what that inmate said, and I think some people wanted to call it cap till we realized that, the filing that came out on Friday or Thursday by the government, which is a response to Diddy's new motion for bail, essentially said Diddy is using like 8 other inmates' personal access codes to call everybody he wants.
Exactly.
This suggests that Diddy has found ways to navigate the restrictions of prison life, essentially using his wealth and influence to gain privileges or favors from other inmates. Academics continued,
add this person to the call, add this person. He's running the jail. So these inmates, I completely believe, and by the way, this is how the government paints it.
The government has claimed that Diddy has shown repeatedly, even while in custody, that he will flagrantly and repeatedly flout rules in order to improperly impact the outcome of the case. They've alleged that he's been using family members to reach out to potential victims and witnesses, and has been encouraging them to create narratives to influence the jury pool. These allegations, if true, would paint a picture of Diddy as someone who's using his resources and connections to try to control his situation, even from behind bars. It suggests that his nights might be spent strategizing and attempting to influence his case, rather than simply adjusting to prison life. But we have to remember that these are allegations that haven't been proven in court. Diddy has pleaded not guilty to all charges, and his legal team has mounted a vigorous defense, focusing on procedural challenges and alleging prosecutorial misconduct. Is Diddy really running the jail? One of the most sensational claims about Diddy's time in prison comes from DJ Academics, who discussed reports that Diddy has significant influence within the facility.
Well, Diddy is now being accused of obstructing justice.
Diddy running the jail, man. He running the spot.
This bold statement suggests that even behind bars, Diddy has maintained a level of power and control that most inmates could only dream of. But what's the evidence for this claim? This suggestion that Diddy is using his wealth to gain favors from other inmates is supported by allegations from prosecutors that he has been paying inmates through intermediaries in violation of prison rules. If true, this would give him significant leverage within the prison environment. Academics argues that this behavior shouldn't be surprising given Diddy's status and resources.
And the only thing I look at is why did people believe or think anything otherwise? You think you're gonna normalize a billionaire that could have any type, if Diddy walked in a room and this guy's of significant money, power, and even respect, despite whatever happened, and y'all are all in jail, you're not gonna be like, yo, bro, he usually don't gotta bring his tray over there to throw it away. Nah, I'll do it.
This perspective suggests that Diddy's influence in prison is simply a natural extension of the power dynamics that exist in society at large. Even in a supposedly equalizing environment like prison, wealth and status continue to matter, but not everyone buys these claims. Freddie P, when discussing the allegations about inmates making Diddy's bed, expressed serious skepticism.
Nah, I don't believe that, because if you do that, 9 out of 10 it would be a rainbow community type of guy, because you probably lose all rank, respect inside of the jailhouse if you do some shit like that. They ain't making your bed.
Freddie P's reaction highlights an important aspect of prison culture. There are certain behaviors that can cause an inmate to lose respect and status. According to his view, making another inmate's bed would typically be one of those behaviors, suggesting that the claims about inmates fighting to make Diddy's bed might be exaggerated or completely fabricated. However, Freddie P did acknowledge that Diddy's money and status would likely ensure he has protection inside.
Puff gonna be okay. Puff got money, Puff got hands, and all he really needs is 2 or 3 shot callers up on him. And Puff gonna become a shot caller, because Puff been employing niggas from the prison system for down to 30 years, 25 years.
This suggests that while the specific claim about bed making might be questionable, the broader assertion that Diddy has influence and protection within the prison could have some basis in reality. The government's allegations against Diddy regarding his behavior in prison provide some additional context for these claims. According to court filings, Diddy has been accused of using the telephone accounts of at least 8 different inmates to avoid monitoring. He allegedly paid these inmates through intermediaries in violation of prison rules and used 3-way calls to contact people he shouldn't have been in touch with. These allegations suggest that Diddy has indeed found ways to exert influence within the prison, though perhaps not in the dramatic fashion that some reports have claimed. Rather than literally running the jail, it's more likely that Diddy has used his resources to carve out certain privileges and advantages for himself within the confines of the system. It's worth noting that this kind of behavior isn't entirely unusual in high-profile cases. Celebrities and wealthy individuals often find ways to make their time in prison more comfortable, whether through official channels like paying for better accommodations in systems where that's allowed, or through unofficial means like cultivating relationships with guards and other inmates. Sam Bankman-Fried, who shares the same unit as Diddy, provided some insight into how high-profile inmates are perceived by others in the facility.
And if, of course, some of them are, I think are thinking like, wow, this is sort of a big opportunity, like, you know, to meet people they wouldn't otherwise get to meet, which is, it shocked me the first time I heard that. Right, it makes sense.
This suggests that there may indeed be inmates who view serving time with Diddy as an opportunity, which could explain why some might be willing to perform tasks for him or offer protection. But what about the specific claim that Diddy is running the jail? This seems to be an exaggeration based on the available evidence. While Diddy may have certain privileges and influence, the reality of prison life is that ultimate control remains with the correctional officers and administration. No matter how wealthy or famous an inmate is, they are still subject to the rules and restrictions of the facility. That said, the allegations about Diddy using other inmates' phone privileges and attempting to contact witnesses are serious. Prosecutors have claimed that he has been trying to blackmail victims and witnesses into silence or into providing testimony that would help his defense. If true, these actions would indicate that Diddy is indeed using whatever influence he has to try to impact the outcome of his case. Academics downplayed the severity of these allegations, suggesting that such behavior is common among inmates.
Yeah.
They all do it.
I talk to inmates
And it's always
on cell phones while locked up in Rikers.
He argued that the government's focus on Diddy's rule breaking is disproportionate compared to how similar behavior from other inmates would be treated.
You can't
Everybody does
you can't, it doesn't matter if everyone else does it. For everyone else, there'll be a slap on the wrist. Everyone knows this is a big fish. No slaps on the wrist when it comes to Diddy.
This perspective suggests that Diddy's celebrity status is actually working against him in some ways, with authorities paying closer attention to his behavior and potentially applying stricter standards than they would to the average inmate. Another aspect of Diddy's influence in prison relates to his past connection. According to Freddie P.,
It ain't nothing to make calls to make sure he okay, especially in New York.
this suggests that Diddy's longtime connections in the music industry and beyond may extend to people with ties to the prison system, potentially providing him with an additional layer of protection and influence. It's also worth considering the layout and structure of MDC Brooklyn when evaluating these claims. Diddy is housed in a dormitory-style unit rather than a traditional cell, meaning he shares space with about 20 other inmates. This setting creates more opportunities for interaction and influence compared to more restrictive housing arrangements. The communal space includes facilities like yoga mats, a small basketball hoop, ping pong, television, and a microwave, creating a somewhat less restrictive environment than might be imagined when thinking of prison. In this context, it's easier to see how Diddy might be able to establish certain relationships and dynamics with other inmates. However, it's important to note that MDC Brooklyn is still a federal detention center with strict rules and regulations. The facility has been criticized for its conditions, with reports of mold, vermin, and neglect, suggesting that even with whatever influence Diddy might have, his experience is still far from comfortable. Another factor to consider is Diddy's mental and emotional state during his incarceration. There have been reports of a meltdown in December 2024 following failed bail attempts, and he was transported to Brooklyn Hospital Center in February 2025 for an MRI scan, possibly due to a knee issue. These incidents suggest that regardless of any influence he might have within the prison, Diddy is still experiencing significant stress and challenges adapting to incarceration. The claim that inmates are fighting over who gets to make Diddy's bed, while sensational, lacks substantial evidence beyond the statements of a few sources like Tura and the inmate interviewed by Lisa Evers. Without more concrete confirmation, this specific allegation should be treated with skepticism. However, the broader claim that Diddy has found ways to navigate the prison system and maintain certain privileges is supported by the government's allegations about his use of other inmates' phone privileges and attempts to contact witnesses. Whether this amounts to running the jail is questionable, but it does suggest that Diddy is not simply accepting the standard restrictions of prison life. The real talk. What happens next for Diddy? first, let's get clear on the timeline. Diddy's trial officially began with jury selection on May 5th, 2025, with opening statements scheduled for May 12th, 2025. As of May 8th, 2025, 45 potential jurors have been qualified, with the process set to continue with peremptory strikes on May 9th, 2025. This trial is expected to last several weeks, potentially determining the course of Diddy's life for decades to come. The charges against Diddy are no joke. He's facing 5 federal counts: racketeering, conspiracy, trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. These charges stem from allegations that Diddy orchestrated freak-offs, drug-fueled sexual performances that lasted days, with victims given controlled substances and receiving IV fluids afterward. Raids on his Miami and Los Angeles homes in March 2024 uncovered over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant, which prosecutors claim supports these allegations. If convicted on the racketeering charge, Diddy faces up to life in prison, with a minimum of 15 years for trafficking. This is not a slap on the wrist or a short stint we're talking about. This could literally be the end of Diddy's life as a free man. What's particularly interesting about Diddy's case is how his behavior in prison might impact his trial. The allegations that he's been using other inmates' phone privileges to contact witnesses and potentially influence the jury pool could significantly harm his defense. Prosecutors have already used these claims to argue against granting him bail, suggesting that he cannot be trusted to abide by rules or conditions. DJ Academics discussed this aspect of the case.
A three-way call is being recorded.
So, my takeaway was much different from that. My takeaway was, I'm gonna wait for the government to file the superseding indictment, which we all believe is coming, because right now it looks a little thin. And it looks a little pathetic, I'm gonna be honest with you.
This suggests that Diddy's alleged rule breaking in prison could lead to additional charges, potentially making his legal situation even more precarious. However, academics also argued that some of the government's claims about Diddy's behavior are relatively minor infractions that are being blown out of proportion due to his celebrity status. Beyond the current charges, Diddy is also facing dozens of civil lawsuits alleging abuse, which he denies, claiming they are attempts for a quick payday. These lawsuits contain allegations spanning from the early 1990s through 2023, including claims of assault and trafficking. While these civil cases are separate from his criminal trial, they contribute to the overall legal pressure he's facing and could potentially influence public and juror perception. One of the most notable civil cases came from his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura, whose lawsuit in November 2023 paved the way for the federal charges. Although this case was settled out of court, footage released in May 2024 showing Diddy assaulting Ventura in a hotel hallway has significantly impacted public perception of the case. This video has reportedly been a factor in jury selection, with some potential jurors being dismissed due to their familiarity with it. With all of these legal challenges, what are Diddy's chances of beating the case? It's difficult to say with certainty, but the combination of federal charges, multiple accusers, and his alleged behavior while in custody presents a formidable challenge for his defense team. The government appears to be building a comprehensive case, with reports suggesting that over the course of their investigation, they interviewed over 50 victims and witnesses, with more expected. Diddy's legal team, led by Mark Agnifilo, has maintained his innocence, emphasizing that his encounters were consensual and denying that they amount to trafficking. They've also challenged various aspects of the prosecution's case, including arguing that a search of his cell violated his attorney-client privilege. However, these procedural challenges may not be enough to overcome the substantial evidence the government claims to have. If Diddy is convicted, what would his life in prison look like long-term? Based on what we know about his current situation at MDC Brooklyn, it's likely that he would continue to be housed in special units designed for high-profile inmates, separate from the general population. This would provide some level of protection, but would also come with significant restrictions. While Diddy's wealth and fame might allow him certain advantages even in a long-term prison setting, the reality is that incarceration would be a dramatic change from his previous lifestyle. Sam Bankman-Fried described prison as aging a person at roughly 3 times the normal rate, suggesting that a lengthy sentence would take a significant physical and psychological toll on Diddy, who is currently in his mid-50s. The isolation from family, friends, and the music industry would also be challenging. Currently, Diddy can make 15-minute phone calls, which are monitored, and participate in video calls. He also has access to a laptop without Wi-Fi for legal purposes, and can receive visitors on Tuesdays. These limited connections to the outside world would become his primary means of maintaining relationships if he were to serve a lengthy sentence. Let's also consider Diddy's financial situation if he's convicted. While he entered prison as a billionaire, legal fees and potential settlements in civil cases could significantly reduce his wealth. Additionally, being being unable to actively manage his business interests could lead to further financial losses over time. However, with proper management, he could potentially maintain significant assets even while incarcerated, allowing him to continue funding his defense and potentially providing for his family. Speaking of family, on his 55th birthday, his children serenaded him via speakerphone, indicating that he's maintaining those relationships despite his incarceration. These connections would likely be crucial for his mental well-being during a long prison term, assuming he's convicted. Another aspect to consider is how Diddy's case might impact the music industry and society's approach to powerful figures. The allegations against him have sparked discussions about accountability, power dynamics, and the treatment of women in the entertainment industry. Regardless of the outcome of his trial, these conversations are likely to continue and could potentially lead to changes in how the industry operates. This suggests that regardless of the specific truth about claims that Diddy is running the jail, his status and resources are likely helping him adapt to prison life in ways that wouldn't be available to the average inmate. If convicted, these same factors might continue to provide him with certain advantages, though they couldn't completely mitigate the harsh realities of long-term incarceration. It's worth noting that Diddy rejected a plea deal on May 1st, 2025, opting instead to proceed to trial. This decision suggests confidence in his defense, or at least a willingness to take his chances with a jury rather than accepting guaranteed punishment. However, given the serious nature of the charges and the potential for a life sentence, this is a high-stakes gamble. The evidence presented at trial will be crucial in determining Diddy's fate. Prosecutors have indicated that 4 alleged victims, including Cassie Ventura, will testify, potentially providing powerful testimony against him. The defense will likely challenge the credibility of these witnesses and attempt to present Diddy's relationships as consensual rather than exploitative. DJ Academics shared his perspective on the strength of the government's case.
Because yes, it's great to make Diddy look like this maniacal mob boss, which, you know, of course he's using the influence of his money. Does anyone, like, again, it's good for the person who never ever dealt with someone in jail. How many inmates, and Vlad, no names here, how many inmates do you know that do three-way call? They all do it.
This suggests that some of the government's claims about Diddy's behavior in prison might be standard inmate behavior rather than exceptional rule breaking. However, the accumulation of allegations, both from his time in prison and from before his arrest, creates a challenging narrative for his defense team to counter. Beyond the specifics of his case, Diddy's situation raises broader questions about celebrity, wealth, and the criminal justice system. His experience in prison, whether it involves inmates fighting to make his bed or simply receiving more respect than the average inmate, highlights how status and resources can influence even supposedly equalizing environments like jails. Freddie P pointed to this reality when discussing Diddy's situation.
He in New York, you know what I'm saying? That's his king, like, he the king. So niggas want to just be a part of helping him just in case he wins.
This perspective suggests that some inmates might be providing support to Diddy, not just because of his current status, but also in anticipation of potential future benefits if he beats his case and returns to his position of power in the music industry. But what about the personal toll of incarceration on Diddy? Reports indicate that he appears thinner and grayer, suggesting weight loss and physical strain from his confinement. The psychological impact is harder to assess, but the alleged meltdown in December 2024 hints at significant emotional stress. Sam Bankman-Fried provided some insight into the psychological challenges of prison life.
Yes. Have you had any problems?
Not of the sort of acute kind. Like, I haven't had, I haven't been attacked or anything like that.
While this suggests that physical safety might not be a primary concern for high-profile inmates like Diddy, Bankman-Fried also described the facility as dystopian and emphasized the psychological toll of confinement with limited meaningful activities. Looking ahead to Diddy's trial, several factors could influence the outcome. The selection of jurors will be crucial, with both the prosecution and defense seeking individuals who might be sympathetic to their respective narratives. The testimony of alleged victims will likely play a central role, potentially providing powerful emotional impact if credible. The defense might attempt to challenge the constitutionality of certain aspects of the charges or argue that Diddy's behavior, while perhaps morally questionable, does not rise to the level of federal crimes like trafficking and racketeering. They might also emphasize inconsistencies in witness testimony or question the motivations of accusers, particularly those who have filed civil lawsuits seeking financial compensation. One interesting aspect of Diddy's case is how it connects to his past legal troubles. Some have drawn parallels to the 1999 nightclub shooting incident, where Diddy was acquitted while his protege Shine was convicted and served nearly 9 years. That case, like his current situation, involved questions about Diddy's influence and the extent to which he could manipulate outcomes through his wealth and connections. allegations. Recent claims by Shine and shooting victim Natanya Rubin have suggested that Diddy was more involved in that incident than the trial outcome indicated, with Rubin claiming in February 2024 that Diddy, not Shine, shot her. These allegations, while unrelated to his current charges, contribute to a narrative of Diddy as someone who uses his power and influence to avoid consequences for his actions. In terms of Diddy's daily life as his trial progresses, he will likely be transported daily from MDC Brooklyn to the courthouse in Manhattan. This process, as described by Sam Bankman-Fried, can be grueling.
I've had a lot of logistical problems, and the biggest, frankly, was when I was on trial. Trying to get access to legal work was nearly impossible. I would, on a typical trial day, they'd wake me up at 4 a.m. I'd spend 5 hours in various buses, vans, and holding cells until my trial started in the morning.
This logistical challenge could impact Diddy's ability to fully participate in his defense, potentially affecting the outcome of his trial. Another factor to consider is the potential for additional charges or accusers to emerge during the trial. Given that lawyer Tony Busby announced plans for over 150 lawsuits against Diddy in October 2024, including 25 involving minors at the time of the alleged incidents, there could be further legal complications ahead, even beyond the current federal charges. If Diddy is convicted, he would likely appeal the verdict, potentially extending the legal process for years. During this time, he would remain incarcerated, continuing to experience the restrictions and challenges of prison life while his case moves through the appellate system. In the event of an acquittal, Diddy would still face numerous civil lawsuits, which have a lower standard of proof than criminal cases. Even if he avoids prison time, these cases could result in significant financial penalties and further damage to his reputation and legacy. It's also worth considering the impact of Diddy's case on his business empire. His various ventures, including Bad Boy Records, Sean John Clothing, and investments in companies like Kyrock Vodka, have contributed to his billionaire status. A lengthy incarceration would inevitably affect his ability to manage these interests, potentially leading to substantial financial losses. That brings us to the end of this video. For more interesting videos like this, click on the cards on your screen. From an inmate winning a whopping $100 million lawsuit against him from jail, to the federal grand jury unsealing their 14-page indictment against him, which includes sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy, among other charges. From here, it only gets worse. This is what happens to P. Diddy in jail. The Great Descent. It turns out that the popular saying about the higher you go, the greater your fall is not a joke after all. One of the greatest rappers and music entrepreneurs, P. Diddy, is descending rapidly from the peak of the world. Apparently, an inmate slammed a whopping $100 million sexual assault lawsuit against rapper P. Diddy, and in an unexpected turn of events, a Michigan court passed a default judgment in favor of the inmate. The reports say a Michigan inmate has won a $100 million default judgment against Sean Diddy Combs in a sexual assault lawsuit, an eye-popping figure handed down after the rapper or his lawyer did not show up in court or file any formal response to the case. However, there is a lot to this case, and I'm about to break it down for you. The mind-blowing case was set in motion by Derek Cardello Smith, an inmate at Ernest C. Brooks Correctional Facility, Michigan, who is known for his long history of challenging the judicial system with civil lawsuits. Derek Cardello Smith is currently serving 75% of jail time for criminal sexual conduct and kidnapping charges, but did not allow his jail time to restrain him from seeking justice after being sexually assaulted by the entertainment mogul nearly 3 decades ago. Hold up, I want you to understand the dynamics here. Cardello won this case while still in prison, which means that the case was done virtually. Dramatically, P. Diddy, who refused to show up in court for reasons best known to him, is now fighting back the judgment. The lawsuit claims that Cardello Smith and rapper P. Diddy met while he was working at a Detroit area restaurant in 1997. During a night of drinking and weed smoking, they reportedly had sex with a group of women, according to the suit. Cardello Smith said he felt a man's hand, which he claims was Diddy's, touching him. Funny because it doesn't matter how drunk you are. When the male hand touches you, you can tell that is a gentleman's touch. According to 51-year-old Cardello Smith, his encounter with Diddy back in the day left long-lasting trauma on him. He alleged that Diddy drugged and sexually assaulted him in 1997 during a party in Detroit. Let me read to you Derek Cardello's complaint against Sean Diddy Combs. I then went to get another drink and Sean asked me if I needed something else. I said no, and he said, "Here, drink this one." And I thought it was another glass of Jim Beam, so I took it because I had sat one down in the other room, and then I drank some more, and I stayed sitting there, and I began getting drowsy and started to pass out, and then Sean Combs said to me, "I added a little something to it for you. I will get that from you anyway, one way or another." And then I passed out.
And then, Cardello Smith claims that when he woke up, Combs allegedly told him that he had assaulted him.
In a nutshell, Derek Cardello claims that while he was unconscious, the rapper assaulted him and told him about it afterward. He then claimed that although he filed a police report, he never had the courage to talk about what went down at the Michigan party. He then gives credit to prison therapy for making him realize that he was sexually assaulted and abused by Sean Diddy Combs.
And he made me a financial offer of $2.3 million to allow what happened to me to go away.
Now here is where it gets spicy. Cardello Smith then provided prison facility information with Diddy's name logged into the visitation record, which allowed him to claim that P. Diddy offered him $2.3 million to dismiss the lawsuit after he filed it. During the August hearing, Derek Cardello Smith told the court that P. Diddy persuaded him to drop the $100 million lawsuit and accept an out-of-court settlement, saying, "You know how we get down." Cardello then replied, "I disagree with how you get down." In that regard, the court granted his motion for a restraining order.
Or your motion for a temporary restraining order was granted. I've signed it. And so we'll get that processed and back to you, and then you'll have to obviously serve that on the parties.
As you can see, P. Diddy never showed up for the virtual court hearing, which prompted Judge Anna Marie Anzalone to pass a $100 million default judgment against the rapper, which entails that starting from October, he would pay $10 million monthly to Derek Cardello. For those who don't know, a default judgment is a kind of legal award granted when an accused party doesn't respond to a legal action. At the hearing last month, the judge said that Combs had been properly served with the lawsuit, and court records indicate that he never answered the claims. Ironically, as soon as the news went public and